The security scanner exploded. Not metaphorically, literally exploded, in a shower of sparks and what sounded suspiciously like electronic screaming. Ambassador Diana Walsh stepped through the smoking wreckage of Galactic Unity Station's most advanced threat detection system, carrying a leather satchel that had just reduced 3 billion credits worth of military-grade equipment to expensive confetti. "Ma'am," the Corvallian security chief said, his forearms trembling as he tried to process readings that his instruments insisted were mathematically impossible. "I'm going to need you to explain what's in that bag." Diana set the satchel down on the scanner's remains with the casual care of someone placing groceries on a kitchen counter. "Paperwork, mostly. Travel documents, diplomatic credentials, the usual." She paused, tilting her head thoughtfully. "Oh, and a skull." "A skull? Nothing fancy, just something I picked up on my way here." The security chief's translator implant made a sound like a dying whale trying to parse the concept of just a skull causing this level of technological mayhem. Behind him, 3 different species of alien diplomats had quietly begun updating their species' emergency evacuation protocols. What kind of skull?" Diana shrugged with the kind of casual indifference that made career diplomats reconsider their life choices. The kind that used to be attached to something that really didn't want to die. The hegemony's Central Processing Division had spent the last 300 years perfecting their civilization evaluation system. 847 distinct criteria, each weighted according to technological development, social stability, military capability, and what they diplomatically termed likelihood of not eating the other delegates. The senior evaluator Korith had personally overseen the assessment of 93 species applying for galactic membership. His track record was flawless, his methodology was unquestionable, his confidence was absolute, which made it particularly unsettling when Earth's preliminary scores started coming back in negative numbers. "Run it again," he told his assessment team, his crystalline fingers clicking against his datapad with increasing anxiety. "We've run it 17 times, sir," his aide replied, her own crystalline structure flickering with stress patterns. "The results keep getting worse." Korith stared at the display showing humanity's evaluation scores. They hadn't just failed the standard categories. They'd somehow achieved negative ratings in areas the hegemony hadn't known were possible to score negatively in. How does a species get a -47 in respect for natural order? "We're not sure, sir. The algorithm keeps returning error messages that translate roughly to, 'This should not be possible,' and 'Please reconsider your life choices,' and their score an appropriate response to hostile wildlife." His aide consulted her datapad, which immediately cracked. "-312, sir." The system classified it as mathematically absurd and suggested we might want to file the application under cosmic horror instead of developing civilization. Korith felt his crystalline structure developing stress fractures. In 3 centuries of evaluation work, he had never encountered a species that managed to score below 0 in categories designed to measure basic survival instincts. What exactly did they do? According to our preliminary cultural analysis, they appear to have systematically hunted to extinction anything on their planet that posed a threat to them. "Sir, that's actually quite reasonable." "Yes, sir. The concerning part is what they did after they ran out of dangerous wildlife." Korith's stress fractures spread visibly across his surface. "What did they do? They started hunting each other. For sport. Then they domesticated the survivors and taught them to hunt alongside them. The evaluation system's main processing unit began emitting smoke." "Sir," his aide continued, consulting a datapad that was now actively smoldering, "there's something else. The human representative is already here." "Already here? The interview isn't scheduled for another 3 cycles. She says she got bored waiting and decided to drop by early. She's currently in processing Bay 7. And..." The aide paused, her stress patterns intensifying to levels that required medical intervention. "She brought samples." "Samples of what?" "We're afraid to scan them, sir." The galaxy's most advanced linguistic translation matrix had been designed to parse communication across 47 distinct forms of consciousness, including sentient mathematics, crystallized emotion, and whatever the entropy cult used instead of language. It had never encountered a human before. "Standard diplomatic query initiating," announced the translation system in its characteristic monotone. Please describe your species' relationship with the natural ecosystem of your homeworld. Diana Walsh looked up from where she was examining what appeared to be a 3,000-year-old ceremonial artifact with the critical eye of someone checking a tomato for ripeness. Which ecosystem? The translation matrix paused. This was not a response it had been programmed to handle. Clarification. Your homeworld's natural ecosystem. Please describe your species' role within the predator-prey relationships of your planet. Well, Diana said thoughtfully, I guess you could say we're kind of at the top. Clarification. You occupy the apex predator position in your planet's food web? Oh no, not at all. We're way past that. The translation matrix attempted to process this response and immediately encountered 17 different logical paradoxes. Error. Please clarify your position in the natural order. We don't really have a position in the natural order, Diana explained helpfully. We sort of opted out. Opted out? Yeah. We decided the natural order wasn't working for us, so we changed it. The translation system began cycling through increasingly desperate attempts to understand what a species that had opted out of the natural order might be. Clarification. You have achieved technological transcendence of biological limitations. Not exactly. We just killed everything that was better at being predators than we were. Killed? Everything? Well, not everything. We kept some of the useful ones around. Bears are fun. Big cats make good pets if you raise them right. Sharks we mostly left alone because they mind their own business. The translation matrix's quantum processors began displaying error messages in languages that had died out before the first stars condensed from cosmic dust. Terra, error, error. Please clarify. You domesticated apex predators? Some of them. Others we just eat. The really dangerous ones we hunt for fun. For fun? Sure. It's called sport hunting. Great way to spend a weekend. The translation system's backup processors came online, took one look at what the primary systems were trying to translate, and immediately filed for reassignment to other sectors. What? What do you hunt? Diana brightened considerably, reaching for her leather satchel. Oh, I'm so glad you asked. I brought pictures. The translation matrix detected approaching catastrophic system failure and began broadcasting an automated distress signal that roughly translated to help in 47 different languages. Actually, Diana continued, I brought something better than pictures. She opened the satchel. The translation system's scream of electronic terror could be heard 3 star systems away. Processing Bay 7 had gone very quiet. Senior evaluator Korith stood outside the sealed chamber, staring at readouts that his instruments insisted were accurate, but his 3-century career in diplomatic assessment told him were completely impossible. The atmospheric analyzers are detecting what? He asked his technical staff. Fear, sir. Massive quantities of ambient fear. The organic compounds suggest that something in that room has triggered the evolutionary panic responses of approximately 97% of known sapient species. How is that possible? We don't know, sir. The reading suggests that whatever's in there with the human triggers instinctual terror responses that bypass conscious thought entirely. Through the chamber's reinforced viewing port, they could see Diana Walsh sitting calmly at a standard diplomatic table. In front of her sat an object that the Bay's scanning systems were stubbornly refusing to classify as anything other than unknown threat level maximum evacuate immediately. Has she said anything since the translation system failed? Just one thing, sir. What? The technical specialist consulted his notes with the expression of someone who deeply regretted his career choices. She asked if we wanted to see the really impressive ones she keeps at home. Korith felt his crystalline structure develop several new stress fractures. How many more specimens does she have? We're afraid to ask, sir. From inside the processing bay, Diana Walsh waved cheerfully at the viewing port and pointed to her satchel with the enthusiasm of someone showing off vacation photos. The satchel moved. Every alien in the observation area immediately began filing emergency requests for transfer to other sectors of the galaxy. Sir, the technical specialist said, his voice cracking with stress. I think we're going to need a bigger threat classification system, but that wasn't the shocking part. The emergency xenobiology team arrived exactly 14 minutes after the translation system's distress call, which was approximately 13 minutes after every other piece of advanced technology in Processing Base 7 had either exploded, crashed, or begun displaying error messages in dead languages. Dr. Vent, the hegemony's chief xenobiologist, approached the bay with the kind of professional caution usually reserved for approaching unstable singularities. "What exactly are we dealing with?" she asked, adjusting her scanning equipment. "A human," Senior Evaluator Korath replied. "And whatever she killed, the object appears to be some form of trophy. Biological material from a deceased organism." Dr. Venth activated her scanners, which immediately began smoking. That's not possible." "What?" "According to these readings, the biological material in that chamber suggests an organism with impossible physical characteristics. Cellular structure that violates conservation of energy. Bone density that shouldn't be able to exist in normal spacetime. Could your equipment be malfunctioning?" "My equipment is designed to analyze the fundamental building blocks of reality," Dr. Venth replied, watching her scanners emit increasingly alarmed beeping sounds. "If it's malfunctioning, it's because whatever's in there is making mathematics optional." Through the viewing port, Diana Walsh had apparently grown tired of waiting and was now examining the skull with the casual interest of someone checking their phone. The artifact, because calling it a skull was beginning to seem inadequate, seemed to pulse with its own internal light. "Doctor," one of her assistants called from his monitoring station, "you need to see this." "What now?" "I tried to run a DNA analysis on the specimen, and the computer asked me if I was sure, then filed a formal complaint with the Galactic Science Directorate." Dr. Venth stared at the readings that her instruments were providing. After 40 years of studying alien biology, she was encountering something that apparently made her entire field of expertise irrelevant. What kind of creature has DNA that makes computers question reality? "The kind," Diana Walsh called through the chamber's intercom system, apparently having overheard the conversation, "that you really shouldn't hunt alone." The xenobiology team's equipment began playing what sounded suspiciously like funeral music. "Ma'am," Dr. Venth called back, trying to maintain some semblance of scientific composure. "Could you perhaps explain what this creature was?" Diana considered the question thoughtfully. "Well, where I come from, we call them weekend projects. Every piece of scientific equipment in the observation area began filing for hazard pay. The sector's military AI network had been designed to calculate tactical scenarios across 17 different dimensions of warfare, process the strategic implications of conflicts involving species with incompatible physics, and maintain real-time threat assessments for civilizations that existed in theoretical states of reality. It was not prepared for Diana Walsh's weekend hobby. "Could you describe the hunting methodology you employed?" Dr. Venth asked, her voice carefully controlled despite the fact that her equipment was now displaying readings that suggested local space-time was developing anxiety issues. Diana leaned back in her chair, the skull positioned casually on the table between them like a centerpiece at a dinner party. "Oh, you know, standard approach. Track it for about 6 weeks, learn its patterns, figure out where it sleeps." The military computers monitoring the conversation immediately began calculating the energy requirements for tracking something whose existence violated several fundamental laws. 3 separate processing cores crashed trying to model the logistics. And then I waited for it to hunt something else, followed it home, and introduced myself. "Introduced yourself?" "Well, technically I introduced it to my rifle, but I like to think we had a meaningful relationship for the 30 seconds before it died." The sector's primary defense grid began updating its threat assessment protocols. Within seconds, Earth's classification shifted from developing world to approach with extreme caution to maybe consider relocating to a different galaxy. "Ma'am," Dr. Venth continued, her scientific training warring with her survival instincts, "what exactly was this creature capable of?" Diana considered the question while idly polishing the skull with her shirt sleeve. "Well, it could phase through solid matter, manipulate local gravity, and had this neat trick where it could exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously." She paused. "Oh, and it fed on fear. The more terrified its prey was, the stronger it got. Every military AI in the sector simultaneously filed emergency requisitions for planet-killing weaponry just in case. How did you kill something that could exist outside normal physics?" "Patience mostly, and really good ammunition." Diana smiled with the kind of casual confidence that made hardened warriors question their career choices. "Turns out, Even interdimensional predators have to exist somewhere specific when they're trying to eat you. The military computers began calculating evacuation scenarios for the entire sector, then expanded to include neighboring systems, then started looking into real estate opportunities in distant galactic clusters. The fear-feeding mechanism, Dr. Vent pressed, despite her better judgment. How did you counter it? Counter it? I didn't counter it. I used it. Used it? Sure. The more scared I pretended to be, the more confident it got. The more confident it got, the sloppier it became. Diana's grin widened. Predators that rely on fear don't know how to handle prey that's just pretending to be afraid. The implications of this statement caused 17 military computers to simultaneously request immediate psychiatric evaluation for their programmers. You deliberately acted as bait? Best hunting strategy there is. Make yourself look helpless, wait for the predator to get overconfident, then show them why that was a mistake. Dr. Venth felt her 4 hearts skip several beats in sequence. How many of these creatures did you hunt? Just the one. They're pretty rare. I had to travel to another continent to find it. Another continent? Yeah, this one was living in the abandoned subway tunnels under New York. Took me 3 months to get the proper permits from the city. The military AI network began seriously considering whether their programming included protocols for mass resignation. You obtained bureaucratic permits to hunt an interdimensional predator in an urban environment? Of course. You can't just go hunting in the subway without proper documentation. That would be irresponsible. Every strategic planning computer in the sector attempted to model a civilization where interdimensional predator hunting required paperwork, and immediately concluded that humans had achieved a level of casual competence that defied all known military doctrine. Ma'am, Dr. Venth said carefully, exactly how common are these hunting expeditions among your species? Oh, not very common at all. Most people stick to easier prey. Easier prey. Diana gestured vaguely. You know, bears, sharks, things that only exist in one dimension at a time. The exotic stuff is more of a specialist market. The sector's defense network began broadcasting automated warnings to all nearby civilizations, translated into 47 languages and 3 mathematical concepts. Avoid Earth. Residents hunt things that should not be huntable. Conference room. Alpha 7 was the most secure facility on Galactic Unity Station. No recording devices, no outside communication access, no chance of anyone accidentally overhearing discussions about whether humanity constituted an extinction-level event for galactic civilization. High Counselor Drax leaned across the polished table toward his fellow representatives, his tentacles writhing with barely controlled panic. Options, he said simply. Quarantine, suggested Admiral Korath immediately. Complete planetary isolation. No contact, no communication, no acknowledgement that they exist. On what grounds? Asked Director Voss from the Intelligence Division. They haven't technically violated any galactic laws. They hunt things that violate physics. Technically, that's not illegal, it's just... Voss consulted his notes. Unprecedented, and possibly mathematically impossible. The probability of this is only 1 in 18. What about reclassification? Offered Counselor Zenth from the Xenobiology Department. We could classify Earth as a restricted research zone. A research zone for what? Studying whatever evolutionary pressure created a species that treats cosmic horror as recreational activity. High Counselor Drax felt his tentacles knot themselves into shapes that would require surgical intervention to undo. Has anyone considered that this might be normal for them? The conference room fell silent except for the hum of air recycling systems, working overtime to process the stress hormones of 17 different species. Normal? Admiral Korath asked weakly. Think about it. She brought 1 skull. 1. She mentioned that the really impressive trophies are at home. Drax's tentacles were now performing gymnastic feats that defied anatomy. What if this isn't their apex predator? What if this is their equivalent of a house cat? Director Voss checked his notes, which immediately burst into flames. According to our preliminary analysis, humans appear to have systematically eliminated anything on their planet that posed a significant threat to them. How is that problematic? That shows intelligent survival behavior. The problematic part, Voss continued, consulting backup notes that were now smoking ominously, is what they did after they ran out of naturally occurring threats. What did they do? they started creating artificial ones. For entertainment, the room's environmental systems began working overtime as 17 different species simultaneously experienced what humans would recognize as existential dread, artificial threats. According to our cultural analysis, they engage in something called extreme sports, activities designed to simulate mortal danger for recreational purposes, such as jumping off cliffs with fabric parachutes, diving into water from great heights, racing vehicles at speeds that should result in certain death. Admiral Korath made a sound like a deflating balloon. They deliberately seek out mortal danger for fun? It gets worse. They've also developed competitive activities, where they attempt to physically subdue each other using only their natural physiology. Combat sports. Recreational violence, yes. But apparently the artificial threats weren't sufficient, because they've also developed what they call adventure tourism, which is traveling to locations on their planet specifically because those locations are likely to kill them. High Counselor Drax felt several of his tentacles develop stress fractures. So, when they eliminated their natural predators, they began creating artificial predators, and when that wasn't sufficient, they began seeking out naturally occurring dangers for recreational purposes? That's correct. What kind of naturally occurring dangers? Director Voss consulted his final set of notes, which immediately filed a formal complaint with the Galactic Science Directorate. Apparently, they climb mountains that kill people, swim in waters inhabited by creatures that eat them, and voluntarily expose themselves to weather conditions that should result in hypothermia. And they do this for enjoyment? According to our analysis, yes. They appear to find the risk of death stimulating. The conference room's life support systems began displaying warnings about atmospheric toxicity from the accumulated stress hormones of all present species. Recommendation? High Counselor Drax asked weakly. New classification category, Admiral Korath said immediately. Something beyond the existing threat assessment matrix. What do you suggest? Class Omega, do not engage under any circumstances. The Great Machine had been built by a civilization that had transcended physical existence 3 million years ago. It could analyze matter down to the quantum level, decode the fundamental forces that held reality together, and answer questions about the nature of existence itself. It was currently having what humans would call a nervous breakdown. Specimen analysis complete, it announced in a voice that suggested it was seriously reconsidering its career in universal truth-seeking. Dr. Venth approached the massive crystalline structure with the kind of reverence usually reserved for approaching gods or unexploded ordnance. What are your findings? The Great Machine's response came after what seemed like an unusually long processing delay. This organism should not have existed, meaning it's extinct, meaning it violates the fundamental principles that govern biological possibility. Dr. Venth felt her professional excitement war with her survival instincts. In what way? The cellular structure suggests an organism capable of existing across multiple dimensional states simultaneously. The bone density indicates physical strength that should have collapsed local spacetime. The neural pathways suggest cognitive abilities that approach omniscience. And the human killed it? According to the molecular evidence embedded in the bone structure, yes. Using primitive chemical propulsion projectiles. Bullets. High-velocity metal fragments, yes. Approximately 7 of them, fired in a grouping that suggests considerable accuracy despite the target's interdimensional nature. Dr. Venth stared at the skull, which continued to pulse with its own internal light despite being very obviously dead. How did she hit something that existed in multiple dimensions? Analysis suggests she predicted its dimensional phase patterns and fired at locations it would occupy rather than locations it currently occupied. She made calculated interdimensional physics in real time? Either that, or she got very lucky 7 times in a row. The Great Machine paused, its crystalline structure flickering with what might have been the machine equivalent of uncertainty. Dr. Venth, yes. I have been analyzing the fundamental nature of reality for 3 million years. In all that time, I have never encountered evidence of an organism that could challenge the basic principles of existence itself. And now I am questioning whether reality has adequate defenses against whatever evolutionary pressure created humanity. Dr. Venth looked back at the viewing port, where Diana Walsh was now casually reading what appeared to be a magazine, while her trophy sat on the table like an expensive paperweight. Machine, in your professional assessment, what threat level should we assign to humanity? The great machine was quiet for a long moment. I am going to recommend we invent new mathematics before attempting that calculation. The restricted archives had been sealed for good reason. Deep in the bowels of Galactic Unity Station, behind 17 different security protocols and guarded by automated systems programmed to kill anyone who asked too many questions, lay the collected nightmares of galactic civilization. Files that documented things best left forgotten. Species that had been classified as theoretically extinct for the psychological well-being of the galaxy at large. Director Voss stood before the archive's main access terminal, his hands trembling as he input his authorization codes. He had spent 40 years in intelligence work without ever needing to access these files. He had hoped to spend another 40 years maintaining that record. The terminal recognized his clearance and spoke in a voice designed to discourage casual browsing. Warning: the following materials contain information classified as existentially hazardous. Continued access may result in psychological trauma, species-wide panic, or spontaneous loss of faith in reality. Do you wish to proceed? I wish to proceed, Voss said, though his tone suggested he very much did not. Please state the reason for accessing restricted archive materials. Species identification. Unknown specimen. Possible threat assessment. The terminal paused, as if considering whether this reason was sufficient to justify unleashing cosmic horror on an unsuspecting intelligence director. Access granted. Please remember that knowledge, once gained, cannot be forgotten. The first file that appeared made Voss wish he had chosen a career in agriculture. Classified. Species designation, Nightmare 7. Settlement. Mythological/extinct. Hopefully/pray to whatever gods you worship that this file never becomes relevant. The accompanying image showed a skull identical to the one currently sitting on Diana Walsh's table, like a grotesque centerpiece. Voss felt his cardiovascular system attempt to resign from his body. According to the file, Nightmare 7 had been encountered exactly 3 times in recorded galactic history. The first encounter had resulted in the complete evacuation of the Zirian system. The second encounter had required the combined firepower of 17 different military fleets to achieve what the official reports diplomatically termed temporary discouragement. The third encounter had been deemed so catastrophic that the file simply stated, "Recommend reclassifying local stellar group as previously inhabited." Each encounter had resulted in the same conclusion. Nightmare 7 specimens were unkillable by any known means, existed outside normal physical laws, and possessed a feeding mechanism that made them stronger with each act of violence directed against them. The file's final recommendation read, "In the event of future Nightmare 7 encounters, immediate retreat to alternate galaxies is advised." Below that, someone had added a handwritten note. "If you're reading this because you found another one, may whatever gods you worship have mercy on your souls." Voss scrolled down to the specimen analysis section and immediately understood why the great machine had requested psychiatric evaluation. Nightmare 7 specimens possessed interdimensional phasing capabilities, reality manipulation on a local scale, psychic feeding mechanisms that converted fear into physical strength, regenerative abilities that approached true immortality, cognitive capabilities that bordered on precognition. The final line of the analysis made Voss question his life choices. Note: specimen appears to become more dangerous when injured. Recommend avoiding any action that might be interpreted as hostile. He stared at the file for several long minutes, then activated his communicator. "This is Director Voss. I need an immediate emergency session with the High Council." "What's the nature of the emergency, sir?" "The nature of the emergency," Voss said carefully, "is that a human just casually brought us proof that they've successfully hunted something that we classified as a cosmic-level extinction threat. Sir, cancel all other appointments, activate maximum security protocols, and someone get me a very strong drink." The emergency xenobiology conference had been hastily assembled in a shielded chamber, designed to contain discussions about universe-ending threats. The galaxy's foremost experts on impossible biology sat around a table that could survive direct hits from antimatter weaponry, which seemed inadequate given the circumstances. Dr. Venth presented her findings with the hollow-eyed expression of someone whose worldview had been systematically demolished by empirical evidence. "Genetic analysis confirms it," she announced to the assembled experts. The specimen is definitely a Nightmare 7. That's impossible, stated Dr. Corvin from the Dimensional Physics Institute. Nightmare 7s can't be killed. It's not theoretically possible given their regenerative capabilities. Nevertheless, Dr. Venth continued, consulting notes that were smoking despite not being on fire. Molecular analysis indicates deliberate termination by kinetic projectile weapons. Kinetic projectiles? You mean bullets? 7 bullets to be precise. Fired in a pattern that suggests the shooter predicted the creature's dimensional phase shifts. Dr. Zarian from the Temporal Studies Division leaned forward with obvious disbelief. She calculated multidimensional physics in real time during combat. Either that, or she developed a hunting methodology that makes multidimensional physics irrelevant. How is that possible? Dr. Venth pulled up a holographic display showing the wound patterns in the skull. According to our analysis, she didn't try to counter its reality manipulation abilities. She worked around them. Explain. Instead of attempting to hit the creature where it was, she fired at every location it might exist simultaneously. Rather than trying to overcome its interdimensional nature, she simply made its interdimensional nature tactically irrelevant. The assembled experts stared at the display with the expression of people watching their field of expertise become obsolete in real time. You're saying she solved the Nightmare 7 problem by ignoring the aspects that made it unsolvable? I'm saying she treated a cosmic-level threat like a normal hunting problem, and applied normal hunting solutions until it stopped being a problem. Dr. Corvin felt his multiple hearts skip several beats. What does this tell us about human psychology? It tells us, Dr. Venth replied, that when humans encounter something impossible, they don't waste time trying to understand why it's impossible. They just figure out how to kill it anyway. The conference room fell silent, except for the sound of several careers in theoretical xenobiology quietly ending. There's something else, Dr. Venth continued. Our cultural analysis suggests that this hunting expedition was considered routine by human standards. Routine? She obtained the proper permits from her local government, filed the appropriate environmental impact assessments, even paid taxes on the trophy. She paid taxes on killing a cosmic horror? Apparently, it's classified as exotic game for tax purposes. Dr. Zarian made a sound like a deflating star. What kind of civilization has tax codes for interdimensional predator hunting? The kind, Dr. Venth said with the tired voice of someone whose scientific optimism had been permanently damaged, that treats gods as weekend projects. The security footage had been classified the moment it was received, not because it contained state secrets or military intelligence, but because watching it caused experienced xenobiologists to file for immediate career changes. Director Voss sat in the secured viewing chamber, staring at a monitor displaying what would forever be known as the recording that ended our understanding of natural order. The timestamp showed Earth date, June 15th, 2157. Location, abandoned subway tunnel system beneath New York City. Camera source, Human Government Surveillance Network. The footage began with Diana Walsh descending into the tunnel system, carrying what appeared to be a backpack, a rifle, and the kind of casual confidence usually associated with people taking walking tours of safe, well-lit museums. Computer, begin analysis, Voss commanded. Warning, the system replied. This footage has been flagged as potentially hazardous to psychological well-being. Are you sure you want to proceed? Proceed. The first 17 minutes showed Diana methodically setting up what she had apparently termed a hunting blind, a camouflaged position that offered clear sightlines while providing tactical cover. She moved with the efficiency of someone who had done this many times before. At minute 18, the Nightmare 7 appeared. The camera's visual sensors immediately began filing error reports as something that technically shouldn't exist started existing very enthusiastically in front of them. Reality flickered around the creature as it phased between dimensions, its form shifting between states of matter that violated several fundamental laws of physics. Diana watched it through her rifle scope with the patience of someone waiting for a bus. At minute 23, the creature detected her presence and began its standard intimidation display. Reality warped around it as it demonstrated its ability to exist in multiple dimensions simultaneously, while projecting psychic terror that should have reduced any sane observer to a catatonic state. Diana yawned. At minute 24, the creature charged. What happened next would require xenobiologists to invent new terminology for tactically superior. Diana fired 7 shots in rapid succession, each bullet calculated to intercept the creature at a different dimensional phase point. The rifle she used was, according to technical analysis, approximately equivalent to a stone knife compared to standard galactic weaponry. The cosmic horror that had once required 17 military fleets to temporarily discourage collapsed with what the audio pickup recorded as a sound like a really disappointed wail. Diana approached the fallen creature, checked for a pulse with the casual professionalism of someone confirming their hunting was successful, then pulled out what appeared to be a permit clipboard and began filling out paperwork. "Computer," Voss said weakly, "what is she doing?" According to the audio pickup, she is documenting the successful completion of her hunting expedition for tax and environmental regulation purposes. Haha, she's doing paperwork. Apparently, human law requires documentation of all exotic game harvesting, including interdimensional predators. Voss watched as Diana completed her forms, carefully photographed the creature from multiple angles for her records, then began the apparently routine process of field dressing a cosmic horror. "Computer, how long did the entire encounter last? From initial contact to completion of legal documentation, 37 minutes. 37 minutes. Yes, sir. This includes time spent completing the required environmental impact assessment." Voss turned off the recording and sat in the dark viewing chamber for several minutes, contemplating the implications of living in a universe where interdimensional predators were subject to human tax law. His communicator buzzed. "Sir, the High Council is ready for your briefing." "Tell them," Voss said slowly, "that we need to completely restructure our understanding of what constitutes a threat to galactic civilization." "What should I tell them the new threat is?" Voss looked at the blank monitor, where evidence of humanity's casual competence had just redefined the possible. "Boredom," he said. "Human boredom is the new threat." Outside the viewing chamber, emergency sessions were already beginning across 17 different star systems as the galaxy's leadership began the process of figuring out how to coexist with a species that treated their nightmares as recreational activities. The universe was about to become a very different place. The emergency legislative session had been called at 3:47 Standard Galactic Time, approximately 6 hours after the Xenobiology Department had collectively filed for early retirement, and 3 hours after the military AI network had begun making inquiries about employment opportunities in other galaxies. High Counselor Drax stood before the assembled representatives of galactic civilization, his tentacles arranged in what his species considered a posture of extreme diplomatic urgency. "Fellow delegates," he began, his voice carrying the weight of someone announcing the end of the world as they knew it. "We are here to address what our legal department has classified as a Code Omega diplomatic situation." "What exactly is a Code Omega situation?" asked Councillor Vorth from the Judicial Review Board. "It's the classification we use for problems that our existing legal framework didn't anticipate, because they involve violations of the fundamental nature of reality." Ambassador Keith from the Trade Federation leaned forward with obvious concern. "Are we talking about the human situation? We are talking about the fact that our current diplomatic protocols don't include procedures for handling species that hunt cosmic horrors for recreational purposes." The chamber erupted in concerned chatter from 47 different species, all of whom were beginning to understand that their comfortable understanding of the universe had developed some significant gaps. "Order!" Drax called, his tentacles making soothing gestures that helped calm the general panic. "The Legal Analysis Division has prepared emergency amendments to galactic law." Director Zahn from Legal Analysis approached the podium carrying a document that appeared to be smoking slightly around the edges. "Article 847B, she announced, hereby establishes the human clause in all future diplomatic interactions. What does the human clause entail? Subsection A. No galactic representative shall inquire about human recreational activities unless they are prepared to receive answers that may fundamentally alter their understanding of what constitutes reasonable behavior. Subsection B. No galactic representative shall request demonstration of human capabilities unless they have filed appropriate psychological trauma waivers and arranged for emergency counseling services. The assembled delegates began taking notes with the urgency of people updating their personal survival strategies. Subsection C. Any facility hosting human representatives must maintain emergency equipment capable of containing, analyzing, or disposing of artifacts that may violate local physics. Is there a subsection D? Director Zahn consulted her smoking document. Subsection D states that any galactic citizen who asks a human to show them their hobby collection does so at their own risk and agrees to hold the Galactic Council harmless for any resulting existential crises. Councillor Vorth raised a procedural concern. These amendments seem unusually specific. Are they based on actual incidents? They are based on the last 6 hours of human-galactic interaction. 6 hours? In 6 hours, humanity has managed to demonstrate that our understanding of cosmic-level threats, impossible biology, and the fundamental nature of reality requires significant revision. High Counselor Drax activated the chamber's main display, showing Diana Walsh still sitting calmly in Processing Bay 7, apparently reading a magazine, while her interdimensional trophy sat on the table like a grotesque paperweight. The human representative has agreed to a formal interview to complete the galactic membership application process. Hasn't she already been interviewed? Previous interviews focused on her recent hunting expedition. The formal interview will address Earth's overall cultural and biological characteristics. What could be worse than interdimensional predator hunting? Drax's tentacles performed what his species considered the equivalent of a nervous laugh. That's what we're about to find out. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. If hunting cosmic horrors was Diana Walsh's idea of casual recreation, what did humanity consider actually impressive? Motion to approve the Human Clause emergency amendments, Drax announced. Seconded, came voices from 17 different delegates simultaneously. All in favor. Every delegate in the chamber raised their appendages, tentacles, or energy projections, in unanimous agreement. The Human Clause is hereby incorporated into galactic law. May whatever gods we worship have mercy on our souls. The formal interview had been moved to Conference Room Alpha Alpha Alpha, which was typically reserved for negotiations involving species that could accidentally destroy star systems through poor communication. It seemed appropriate given the circumstances. Diana Walsh entered the chamber carrying her leather satchel and what appeared to be a photo album, greeting the assembled xenobiology experts and diplomatic officials with the cheerful wave of someone arriving at a neighborhood barbecue. "Sorry I'm a little late," she said, settling into a chair that had been specifically designed to contain universe-ending threats. "I was finishing up some calls to folks back home. Turns out my nephew wants to major in xenobiology after I told him about this trip." Dr. Venth felt her 4 hearts skip several beats. "Your nephew is interested in studying alien biology." "Oh yeah. He's particularly excited about your taxonomy systems. He thinks humans could help improve the classification accuracy." "Improve how?" Diana opened her photo album with the enthusiasm of a proud aunt showing off family pictures. "Well, for starters, you've got about 40% of your extinct species listed wrong." The xenobiology team leaned forward with a combination of professional curiosity and existential dread. "Wrong how?" "They're not extinct. They're just really good at hiding." Diana flipped to the first page of her album. "This is my Uncle Frank, with what you call a void stalker. Great uncle, actually. He bagged this one about 15 years ago." The photograph showed a middle-aged human man in hunting gear, standing next to something that the galactic records insisted had been extinct for 3,000 years. "That's impossible," Dr. Venth whispered. "Void stalkers exist in non-Eclipsean space. They can't be photographed." "Uncle Frank's pretty good with cameras. He does wedding photography as his day job." "Wedding photography?" "Yeah, but monster hunting is his real passion. He's got 17 different species you guys think are extinct." Dr. Venth felt her sanity developing stress fractures. 17? Diana flipped through several pages of photographs showing various humans posed with creatures that violated different aspects of reality. "Here's my cousin Janet with a temporal wraith. Nasty things. They try to erase you from the timeline. Janet caught this one trying to steal Christmas, if you can believe that. She captured a creature that exists outside linear time." "Captured?" "Oh no, she killed it. These are all trophy photos." The xenobiology team began making quiet sounds of psychological distress. "This one's my brother Mike with what I think you call a probability demon. Took him 3 tries to kill it because it kept shifting to timelines where he hadn't shot it yet." "Your brother hunts creatures that manipulate causality?" "Mike will hunt anything if you give him enough beer and point him in the right direction. Not the brightest bulb, but he's persistent." Diana continued flipping through the album, each page revealing new evidence that humanity's idea of recreational hunting included the systematic elimination of creatures that galactic civilization had classified as theoretical impossibilities. Oh, this is a good one. My daughter Tracy with her first cosmic horror. She was only 16, but she'd been begging us to let her try solo hunting. Your 16-year-old daughter hunts cosmic horrors? Well, she started with smaller stuff, worked her way up. We don't just throw kids in the deep end with reality benders. That would be irresponsible. Dr. Venth made a sound like a deflating balloon. What do you consider appropriate prey for a 16-year-old? Oh, basic nightmares, shadow demons, the occasional elder thing. Nothing too challenging. The assembled experts began quietly updating their personal wills. Ma'am, Dr. Venth managed, you mentioned that the skull you brought was from a warm-up hunt. Could you clarify what you mean by that? Diana brightened considerably. Oh, sure. I only had a weekend free, so I couldn't travel very far from home. The really good hunting requires at least a week. Where do you go for the really good hunting? Other dimensions mostly, sometimes other planets, but Earth has most of the challenging stuff. Earth has the challenging stuff? Oh, absolutely. You'd be amazed what lives in the deep ocean. Underground cave systems, abandoned buildings. We've got a whole ecosystem of creatures that technically shouldn't exist. Director Voss felt his species' equivalent of a heart attack. An ecosystem? Sure. Predators, prey, scavengers, the whole food web. Most of them feed on fear, despair, or existential dread, so they do pretty well around human population centers. And humans hunt these creatures. Someone has to keep the population manageable. Can't just let them breed out of control. Diana flipped to the back of her photo album. These are the ones mounted in my den at home. The really impressive trophies. The photographs showed a room that could have served as a museum of impossible biology. Skulls, claws, and various appendages from creatures that violated different aspects of reality lined the walls like decorative art. That's quite a collection, Dr. Venth said weakly. Thanks. I'm particularly proud of the Nightmare Lord skull above the fireplace. Took 3 months to track that one down. Nightmare Lord. Big interdimensional predator. Feeds on entire civilizations worth of fear. Really challenging hunt, because it exists in the collective unconscious of everyone who's ever had a bad dream. The assembled experts began making financial arrangements for their families in case of sudden, career-ending psychological trauma. How did you kill something that exists in the collective unconscious? Lucid dreaming, Diana replied as if this explained everything. Turns out, if you can control your own dreams, you can fight things that live in dreams. You hunted through the dream realm? Dream realm, nightmare realm, couple different pocket dimensions. Reality's got a lot more layers than most people realize. High Counselor Drax activated his communicator with trembling tentacles. This is an emergency authorization for immediate galactic membership approval for Earth. Sir, don't you need to complete the full evaluation process? No, Drax replied, watching Diana Walsh flip through photographs of her family's casual encounters with cosmic impossibility. We need to approve their membership before they get bored and decide to hunt us. The membership ceremony had been hastily organized in the main diplomatic chamber, with representatives from every major galactic civilization in attendance. Not because they wanted to witness this historic moment, but because they wanted to make sure humanity felt properly welcomed and had no reason to consider galactic civilization as potential prey. Diana Walsh stood at the center of the chamber, still carrying her leather satchel and photo album, while High Counselor Drax presented her with the formal documents establishing Earth's full membership in the Galactic Council. On behalf of galactic civilization, Drax announced, his voice carrying across the chamber's acoustic systems, we welcome humanity to the galactic community. Thanks, Diana replied cheerfully. This has been really educational. I've learned a lot about how other species handle dangerous wildlife. Handle it how? Well, mostly you seem to run away from it or worship it as gods. That's definitely one approach. The chamber fell silent as several hundred alien representatives contemplated the implications of humanity's alternative approach to cosmic horrors. We look forward to learning from human expertise in wildlife management, Drax continued diplomatically. Oh, you should definitely talk to my cousin Ralph. He runs a pest control business that specializes in interdimensional affestations. Gets calls from all over the planet. Penance control. Sure. You'd be surprised how often people get nightmare creatures in their basements or shadow demons in their attics. Ralph's got it down to a science. Director Voss felt his entire worldview collapse and rebuild itself around the concept of humanity treating cosmic horrors as household pests. "Ma'am," he asked carefully, "what would humanity like in return for sharing this expertise?" Diana considered the question thoughtfully. "Honestly, we're just excited to find out what kinds of interesting creatures live on other planets. Earth's getting a little picked over." "Picked over?" "Yeah, we've pretty much hunted most of the really dangerous stuff to sustainable population levels. Could use some new challenges." The chamber filled with the sound of several hundred alien species simultaneously reconsidering their planetary security arrangements. "Oh," Diana added, reaching into her satchel, "I almost forgot. I brought gifts." She pulled out several smaller skulls, each one pulsing with its own eldritch energy. "These are from what we call pest species back home. Figured you might want them for your museums or research facilities." Dr. Venth approached the offered skulls with the expression of someone being handed active grenades. "What exactly are these?" "Basic shadow spawn, a couple of fear feeders, and I think that one's from a reality mite." Diano shrugged. "Nothing too impressive, but they're good examples of what we consider nuisance animals. The implications of humanity's nuisance animals being other species' cosmic horrors created a thoughtful silence that stretched across the chamber. "Well," High Counselor Drax said finally, "this concludes Earth's application process. Welcome to the galactic community." Diana Walsh shook tentacles, claws, and various appendages as she made her way around the chamber, leaving behind a trail of profoundly disturbed alien representatives who were beginning to understand that their ancestors' nightmares hadn't been metaphorical. As she reached the chamber's exit, she turned back to address the assembly one final time. "Oh, and if any of you are ever in the neighborhood of Earth, feel free to stop by. Just maybe call ahead. We like to know when potential prey is coming to visit." The door closed behind her with a soft pneumatic hiss, leaving several hundred of the galaxy's most advanced civilizations to contemplate their new understanding of the food chain. High Counselor Drax looked around the chamber at his fellow representatives, noting the various expressions of existential crisis, professional terror, and dawning comprehension. "Any questions about humanity's membership status?" The chamber remained silent except for the soft humming of life support systems working overtime to process the stress hormones of 47 different species. "Meeting adjourned," Drax announced, "and may whatever gods we worship help us all." As the representatives filed out to begin updating their species defense protocols, one thought echoed through the collective consciousness of galactic civilization. They had just discovered that they weren't the apex species in the universe. They weren't even close. The universe had just become a much more interesting place to live.